today we are catching up with Sam Lake, who is the creative director of Alan Wake 2. How are you feeling that the game is almost out?
I'm feeling happy, excited, nervous. I think that the whole mix of cocktail of different emotions is part of the whole thing. Obviously, looking forward for everybody to get to play it. Like we've been working for this for a very long time.
Your background, you studied literature in school, and then you did screenplay writing.
Yep, yeah.
Now you're writing games. How
Yes.
is that different from everything else?
It is different in some ways. Obviously, kind of the medium has certain practices and rules that you need to learn, but many aspects of it is well, it's storytelling and writing a story, and then it's screenwriting in the like, good dialogue is good dialogue, and so certain things are the same for different mediums like film and TV or just prose, and then the interactive element on it requires some specific knowledge.
Yeah, do you come at the game design angle of it like with the story fully planned out, or does the design kind of influence where the story goes?
It's teamwork, definitely. So different areas influence each other, and it's back and forth, and it's iteration. A lot of the developing a game is iteration. At Remedy, perhaps we lean on the story a bit more and earlier than some other studios. So very early, a lot of thinking goes on who is the protagonist and what is the setting and what is the story overall. But then different aspects of the game are going hand in hand and side by side forward.
Yeah, so Alan has been stuck in the dark place for over a decade now.
Poor guy.
How do you approach writing that he's gone through all that, but still having him be recognizable as the character we last saw?
Yeah, I mean, this is a horror story, and there is a lot of psychological horror, especially on Alan Wake's part of the story. We come back to him, and he has been stuck in this nightmare dimension of the dark place for 13 years, and it does show. It is an important part of where we start with the character and how his story arc goes, is that it has left a definite mark on him, and he is struggling, and well, he in more ways than one, he's in a dark place in his life.
The bit of the game we just played with you, there's a lot of shifting in realities. When you're writing kind of a world where anything can happen, how do you set forth rules to keep it still grounded?
Yeah, rules are really, really important. I mean, this is a very dense, layered story experience. So there is a lot packed into it, but all the more reason, even if we don't explain them, we are following rules, and that's a big part of it. There is a lot of mystery, a lot of that kind of thriller elements tied to it, and we don't want to hold the player's hand too much. We don't want to over-explain anything. We rather have the gamers piece it together on their own or form a theory of what's going on. But for that to be kind of honest and true, we need to ourselves understand and have an idea, especially for this, like with interactive storytelling. And we have two playable characters. We have Alan Wake in the dark place, and then we have FBI agent Saga Anderson in Washington State investigating these murders, and the player is free to pace the experience like as they choose. So they can follow Saga further along, they can follow Wake, or they can switch between them, and just to get that working and not have the control to say lead one hero character into an awful cliffhanger and then we switch to the other side. It meant that we are giving up these kinds of rather basic suspense storytelling tools, and needed to come up with rules for that as well. That there are twists and turns in both story threads, but not across them. And in the interactive storytelling in games, what you gain instead is that the player is very engaged, and that way you have kind of a excited audience and who are invested into finding out what's going on.
Yeah, and with the introduction of Saga as a player character, what does she kind of offer that Alan doesn't?
For Remedy games overall, we wanted to create a new hero character. We've been working on games and like for over 28 years now, and still looking at the kind of like hero characters that we have created along the way, there are not that many. So for us, it's always a big thing to come up with a new protagonist. Wanted to do kind of a modern, interesting character with her, something different that we have done before. But also, like one aspect of this is that because this is a sequel, and because we have now established the concept of Remedy Connected Universe with Control, the game, and Alan Wake, and both play a part in Alan Wake 2, we were also mindful of wanting to create an experience and story that is approachable for those gamers who have maybe not played any Remedy game before, and that is also a part of, you know, having a point of view character like Saga, who has, before the events of this game, never experienced supernatural things, which are obviously supernatural horror story. So when she comes in on an FBI investigation of these ritualistic murders, and then strange things start to happen and supernatural horror creeps in, she's experiencing it for the first time. She's a really capable agent and a profiler, and she starts putting it together, and with that, you know, the gamers, the audience, is learning about that as well. You know, Saga takes us into this experience, whether you have played the previous Alan Wake, maybe, you know, over 10 years ago and don't really remember that much, or have not played it at all.
All right, and Alan has been a character that's been with you for so long. Do you always know what he's going to do in a plot, or does he ever surprise you?
He does surprise me. Like I think that's part of it. Like part of writing a story, and kind of something that should also happen if you are truthful to the character and the story. I mean, part of writing for video games is the fact that you know, as we talked about, these tracks are moving, and you need to have a pretty firm idea of the story overall, like locations where things happen, and kind of the overall plot, because that needs to be communicated to the rest of the team early enough so that everybody can be working on the same thing. But that does not mean that when we get to specific scenes and you kind of like go in and start writing the actual scene in detail and the dialogue, very often it happens that, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right for the character, and then suddenly new ideas start to come that, okay, this is what the character actually does in this scene. So on the high level, we need to lock enough, but then when we go deeper into the details, yeah, the characters do kind of start taking over in many ways.
We obviously see a lot of Stephen King in Alan. Are there any less known, especially maybe Finnish authors that kind of inspired him?
Yeah. Yeah, I like the the funny thing for me is that I've always like, you know, I'm a Finn and Finnish is my native language, but for the longest time it feels to me now uh, everything I've read and the working language overall has been English. Uh, there are certainly a lot of inspiration, a lot of books, especially kind of related to Alan Wake's character. Yes, Stephen King, for sure. And funnily enough, I feel that the biggest inspiration for him to me came from his writing guide on writing, his autobiographical book, where he actually goes on to state that when things were bad in his life, like with alcoholism and things like that, it was the time when he was writing The Shining or Misery, and obviously they are the famous books where there is a very tortured and flawed writer character, but he is saying that that's basically me, and to me then it was really interesting reading that book and thinking about inspirations for the character. Paul Auster, like us being in New York, is definitely one inspiration that I've felt through the years. I Bret Easton Ellis's like Lunar Park, where he puts himself as this kind of a writer character who is not doing so well into the story. Yeah, I mean that there are plenty of examples like you mentioning Finnish writing and it's something that looking from Finland to outside and American popular culture especially has been kind of the main driving inspiration, but more and more I've found that kind of, and maybe it's partly growing older, you like I've started to appreciate kind of Finnish culture and folklore and these kinds of things more and more, and just realize how exotic and how unique it is as something to tap into and bring into our experiences. So definitely in Alan Wake 2 overall there is more nods to Finnish culture than ever before, and in some ways that started with our previous game Control, where we brought in Ahti, the kind of a quirky, strange janitor character who comes from Finland, and we've certainly kept running with this idea for Alan Wake 2.
How have Alan's books been selling since he disappeared? Publishers consider locking authors in the dark place?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like there are a lot of layers, a lot of meta, kind of, and a lot of metaphor overall in this. The dark place being stuck in your head, all of us being stuck in our heads, and struggling with the creative process overall. That was very much part of the kind of the theme and plot of the first game, and yeah, it is part of this one as well. His writing is affecting reality and coming alive, especially in the dark place around him, and we do learn that he's been constantly writing for 13 years, trying to crack the perfect story that would shape reality and allow him to escape, and he just keeps failing and trying different things, and kind of it's a mess. He keeps forgetting, but it is affecting the reality around him. So everything has a meaning in the dark place. Like it's now New York because he comes from New York. For years he wrote his crime books set in New York, and his detective character Alex Casey now seems to haunt the whole place. He keeps running into Casey and seeing visions of Casey, and even down to kind of like graffiti everywhere. It seems to be all kind of from his mind messages back to him.
All right, great. And final question: will we be seeing Barry in Alan Wake 2?
Well, it's a good question. Barry was obviously a very important part of the first game, and we have a big cast in this game. A bunch of new characters coming in, and many of the old ones. Let's just keep it on the level of we will certainly get some glimpses on what has been going on in Barry's life.
All right, great. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you. This was fun.